It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Thanks so much for joining us for On the Record. I'm Lena Tillett. We are exactly 45 days away from the March 5th primary election in North Carolina, our state joining 15 other states and territories nationwide to select our general election contenders. Some big statewide races are on the primary ballot, and tonight we are focused on the race for governor. Top candidates on the Republican ticket: Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, State Treasurer Dale Folwell, and lawyer Bill Graham. On the Democratic side, State Attorney General Josh Stein and former State Supreme Court Justice Mike Morgan. On this show, for much of the next 6 weeks, we will be interviewing top candidates. We want to ask them where they stand on kitchen table issues and why they think this is the right time for them to run. Tonight, we begin with Justice Mike Morgan and Attorney General Josh Stein, who will get an equal amount of time to answer our questions. Here's a bit about the judge. Mike Morgan is from Cherry Point, North Carolina. He attended Duke University and NC Central University School of Law. Morgan served as a judge for 34 years in our state, rising to the highest level, becoming a state Supreme Court justice in 2016. Morgan retired last summer to run for governor. And Justice Morgan, thanks so much for joining me. Let's start right there. You've been on the judicial side for decades, and now you're going to be pivoting to the executive branch if elected as governor. Why run for governor, and why now?
I feel like the time is now to run for governor. It's time for me to transition from the 34 years I had on the bench of North Carolina, encompassing 4 judgeships, more than anybody in the state of North Carolina has ever had the opportunity to occupy, and to transition those skills honed over decades of experience to now go over to the executive mansion and lend my expertise that I've gotten, honing them over the course of that time to figure out complex solutions to issues that face North Carolina. I'm the best qualified for this opportunity, and that's why I'm offering myself. I just feel as though the time is right. With this broken government that we have, is fractured. We have too many people talking beyond one another and not with each other. And so as a result, the time is now for me to offer myself.
You say government is fractured. If you become governor, you would likely be facing a Republican-controlled state legislature. How can you work with the other side? Specifically, what policies would you be able to work on together?
I feel confident that I can work with those on the other side of the aisle. I've done that when I was on the bench of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. I dealt with a democratically controlled Supreme Court. I've dealt with a Republican-controlled Supreme Court. I know what it's like to work with others of similar orientations as well as different orientations, building consensus as we had to do on the Supreme Court of North Carolina in order to make sure that we handled the court's business in a proper and efficient way. I certainly feel as though there's some lower hanging fruit opportunities that I can build relationships, for starters, as governor with others in the legislature, build from there. For example, I know that Medicaid expansion has been something that finally has occurred. I agree with that outcome, but we can go further on that. That would be a place I would start. Also, broadband expansion is something that has been working as well. I'd like to see that expanded to all sectors of North Carolina. All people deserve to have an opportunity to have an equal playing field when it comes to access to what all other citizens have. So those are areas that I think will be of common interest, and then we can launch from there and look at the more difficult issues, having established the fact that we know we can agree on certain matters. It's just a matter of being respectful, being agreeable, and having an open pipeline to communication.
Let's talk about one issue we know was bipartisan in the last session. So sports betting legalized in North Carolina last year. Legalizing casinos could be up next. Do you agree with that? And do you agree with the plan to build them in poorer communities?
I don't agree with casino expansion, especially in the rural areas. I don't want this Republican-led General Assembly to feel as though they can just get away with something on the surface when it comes to putting up casinos in our rural areas. There needs to be something more sustainable for them, more deeply rooted in our rural areas for economic development that will last, as opposed to just building casinos. With casino gambling, that's just too risky from the standpoint of it depending largely on those that have disposable income. Disposable income rises and falls with the economy. We need to have something that is sustainable, real jobs that offer real pay that are going to be entrenched in the community instead of lower paying jobs in terms of those that are operating as blackjack dealers and keno runners and those kinds of games. We need to have something sustainable in our rural areas to build up our economic infrastructure there. So I'm not in favor of casino gambling being expanded. I don't want the legislature to feel as though if they drop casinos into certain sectors of our geographic areas rurally, that's going to be enough. There needs to be more to bring up rural North Carolina when it comes to strong, sustained economic development.
You have said that you support women's access to abortion care. The 12-week ban in North Carolina is now law. What's your plan to protect reproductive care moving forward?
Well, again, we're going to have to look with the legislature to make sure that there is more of an understanding that women need to have control over their bodies. These are health decisions, not governmental decisions. There should not be governmental intrusion into health decisions. HIPAA respects that, the federal law that says that anyone that has health matters, medical matters, those are to be maintained as confidential. The right to an abortion, the right to have any health matters to be determined by a woman should be determined by way of consultation with a medical provider. So I am not in favor of government intrusion into these kinds of health care decisions. They should be confidential. They should be private between a woman and her doctor. But government has no place there.
But Justice Morgan, what specifically can you do to protect women's access to reproductive care?
Well, it starts at the top with the governor's office in terms of letting it be known that there needs to be a change in the law. Just like the legislature has enacted this law, it can be disassociated and therefore can be undone in such a way that we can have more responsible legislation to be passed. Rest assured, if I'm elected to be governor, that means there is a change in the legislature, and there will be those that look at matters the way that I do. I would work with those legislators that are left. I'll work with new legislators that see matters more the way I do. We get a change in the law, also educating people to understand that this is not just an emotional issue. So many people are emotional about a very difficult circumstance and issue.
To be clear, you would want to repeal the law. Is that what I understand you're saying?
You're seeing that, yes.
As part of your policy positions for education on your website, you wrote something that was interesting. You said public schools should teach the true and accurate history of our state. This week, we reported on a local county banning a number of books that they consider, quote, vulgar, including The Bluest Eye from Pulitzer Prize winning author Toni Morrison. How do you respond to that? And what can you actually do to stop efforts like that from happening on a local level?
We shouldn't have these First Amendment abridgments, again, based upon yet another emotional, gut-wrenching reaction to what folks agree with and disagree with when it comes to how they look at the world through their lens. We can work with, as a state government, local government, in terms of the respect that needs to be given to those that have differing views. That's how our system operates. Recognizing the First Amendment, recognizing the fact that there are differing views and opinions, respecting those and allowing there to be an opportunity for folks to learn and to hopefully grow from conversation, discussion, even disagreement on matters. So state government should certainly yield in a great way to local government, but state government certainly should still have a voice as well to make sure that everybody's rights are protected.
Justice Mike Morgan, thank you so much for your time and best of luck in the weeks ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Coming up, we'll talk to Morgan's opponent in the Democratic primary for governor, State Attorney General Josh Stein. Stay with us. Joining us now to paint the picture of where we are in the race for governor is Dr. David McLennan, a Meredith College professor. Professor McLennan, so great to see you. I want to talk about the latest Meredith College poll. It shows that Attorney General Stein does have a sizable lead right now over Justice Morgan, 38% to 11%. But the undecided category, that's the one that I find interesting. 42% of voters right now say they are undecided. What do you make of that?
Well, it's not unexpected. I mean, this is an open seat governorship. Roy Cooper is term limited, so people who are used to having Roy Cooper in the governor's office no longer have him. And so I think they're just taking some time to get to know the candidates. Josh Stein got in the race much earlier, obviously, than Justice Morgan, so I think that gives him the lead that he has. But I think a lot of North Carolinians probably woke up on January 1st and said, oh, we do have a governor's race and a primary on both the Democratic and Republican sides in March.
We know that A.G. Stein has won 2 back-to-back statewide elections as Attorney General, but still, again, 42% undecided. Do you think that means he has a lot of work to do with Democrats?
Well, I think anybody running for state office is going to have a lot of work. I mean, most of the voters' attention is on the presidential race. So on March 5th, we'll also have presidential primaries. So I think all statewide candidates are looking to become better known to the voters. And I think Attorney General Stein and Justice Morgan will use the next 45 days to try to make their case to the voters.
Let's talk about a potential general election matchup between A.G. Stein and Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. In the Meredith College poll, Josh Stein is up 38% to 36% for Robinson. Obviously, that's essentially a tie. What do you think would make the difference in that race?
Well, I think there are a couple of factors that are going to affect that race. First of all, how the presidential race goes. We know that there is an effect down ballot from the presidential race, but you know, as we've seen in the past 2 election cycles, we've had people vote for Donald Trump and vote for Roy Cooper. And so I suspect that the Democratic candidates are going to, whoever the Democratic candidate is going to be trying to play for that kind of voter very hard, because that's going to be key in North Carolina. We know these races are going to be close. I mean, we've seen close governor's races, we've seen close presidential races. So I think the Democratic nominee is going to not only appeal to the Democratic base, but try to reach those crossover voters.
All right, Professor McLennan, thank you so much, as always, for your insight. It is going to be a long year, but I definitely will be coming back to you often. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up after the break, we interview Attorney General Josh Stein. Welcome back. We're continuing our candidate conversations ahead of the March 5th primary in roughly 6 weeks. The other top candidate is Attorney General Josh Stein for the Democratic primary. Let's learn a bit about him. Josh Stein grew up in Chapel Hill. He attended Dartmouth College and Harvard Law School. Stein served in state government before being elected to the state Senate in 2008, representing the 16th district, which includes part of our area. Stein went on to win 2 terms in 2016 and 2020 as state attorney general. And Attorney General Stein, thanks so much for joining me. Last week, your campaign released you all were able to raise more than $5 million in the last 6 months, much more than your opponent and also the top Republican. You've also been endorsed by Governor Cooper and other top state Democrats. But establishment candidates have had mixed success in recent years. So what's been your message to Democratic voters about why you're the right choice?
I've been so gratified by the width, breadth, depth of support that this campaign is garnering all across North Carolina. Contributions from all 100 counties. As you said, we've raised more money than any campaign ever has in North Carolina history. So honored to have the support of Governor Cooper. And I think all Democrats in the General Assembly, maybe other than one. And so the reason why I think we're off to such a strong start is because folks understand the rationale of this candidacy, which is I have been fighting for people here in North Carolina my entire career, and most importantly, these last 7 years as Attorney General. And we've been delivering real results for people, whether it's tackling the opioid crisis or eliminating the backlog of untested rape kits or making sure that people's drinking water is clean or making sure that people's fundamental freedoms, like the right to abortion or the right to vote, those are protected. And I think because we have a compelling argument to make, folks are getting on board, and we're going to build this campaign over the next 9.5 months to make sure that we win in November.
For those who think that a Stein administration would just be a continuation of a Cooper administration, how do you respond to that?
Well, I have great respect for Governor Cooper. I worked for him closely for 8 years. I headed the Consumer Protection Division for him when he was Attorney General before he became governor. And Governor Cooper has been a great leader, and I see the world actually through a similar lens as he does. But we're different people. We have different personalities, different ideas, different sensibilities. And so it will be my own administration, but clearly I have great respect for what Governor Cooper has been able to accomplish for North Carolina these past 7 years.
Well, let's talk specific policies now. You'll likely be working with the Republican-controlled legislature, I guess, unless things change this year. What specific policy goals can realistically be achieved with this legislature?
Well, if the Republicans retain control of the General Assembly in 2024 after this election, and I'm the governor, I will work with them with goodwill to try to get good things done for the people of North Carolina. And all you have to do is look at my track record as Attorney General to see that we have gotten good things done these past 7 years with a Republican legislature. The opioid crisis has been devastating to families across North Carolina, and the families who are affected are Democrats, the Republicans, and their unaffiliated. The chemical does not ask a person, what party are you, before it takes over control of their life. Same with a victim of sexual assault. The rapist never says, are you a Democrat or Republican, before the rapist assaults that person. And so if we find issues that make a difference in the lives of the people of North Carolina, that will help Republican lives, Democratic lives, and people who are unaffiliated. And I've done that with opioids. I've done it with rape kits. We've done it with modernizing our laws to protect kids from sex assault. So we will do that. I will do that as governor as well. Every person in North Carolina has a stake in a strong public school system. 75%, 78% of kids in North Carolina go to a public school. Those are Republican kids, those are Democratic kids, and those are kids who are unaffiliated. Obviously, they're all unaffiliated until they get registered, but their parents are. And so it's all about making sure that those kids, all kids, get a good education. And that's the case I'm going to make with the legislature.
We just talked to Justice Morgan. We discussed legalized gambling in North Carolina. Obviously, sports betting, that's already legal. Casinos, that's going to be a big issue this year and next. Where do you fall on it? Justice Morgan does not agree with legalizing casinos.
Yeah, I think that there are other strategies for economic development that are proven and that are more durable. I would much rather see us investing in K-12, investing in our community college system, helping to bring great businesses to North Carolina as we transition this economy to a clean energy economy. I mean, we want people to be able to get a job that pays them a good enough salary that they can support their family. And whether they go to college or not, if they go and get a trade at a community college, they should still be able to provide their family wherever they live in the state. And I just think that casinos are not the winning economic development strategy for North Carolina.
What do you think should come to these poor communities instead?
Well, what we have to do is make sure that every community has the conditions for success. That's why having broadband effectively deployed across North Carolina is so critical. Right now, there are communities in North Carolina in which there isn't broadband, and those communities are immediately hamstrung in their ability to compete economically in the 21st century. So broadband, making sure we have good roads and railroads, making sure we have excellent public schools in every community in North Carolina is urgent, and it has been a disgrace how the legislature has defunded public education in North Carolina. We're 49th in the country as a share of our state's economy that we spend on K-12. That is absolutely unacceptable. We have to make sure our community college systems remain strong so that when a business decides to locate to a rural community, that they'll have confidence that the workforce will be able to meet their needs. So there are a lot of things we can do in terms of investing in institutions and infrastructure that can help rural communities succeed.
So let's talk about abortion access in North Carolina. There is a new 12-week ban, with the exception of the life of the mother and the baby. What is your plan to protect reproductive care moving forward? Justice Morgan said he would be seeking to repeal the law if he's able to do that. The legislature shaped up to be able to do that. Is that something that you would seek to do?
Yeah, I definitely think that the restrictions that were passed this last summer are damaging to women's interests here in North Carolina. The decision whether or not to have an abortion is about the most personal decision a person can ever have to go through. And it is a decision that that woman should make, talking with her loved ones, talking with her doctor. A bunch of politicians in Raleigh should not be making that decision for her. And that is exactly what happened last summer. I opposed the law that was passed. I certainly will veto any effort to further restrict abortion in this state. And by the way, that is a real risk in the outcome of this election, because my likely opponent, the lieutenant governor, has said that he wants to ban abortion in any instance with no exceptions, not for rape, not for incest, not for the life or health of the mother. And that is absolutely wrong. And I will not allow that to happen on my watch as governor.
Well, let's talk about Mark Robinson, because your campaign video did seek to paint the top contender as pretty extreme in a lot of different ways. Why do you think that's going to be effective for you?
Just to be clear, I didn't try to paint him in any way. He spoke his own words, and his own words are extreme, and his own words are hateful. They are not the words, they're not the worldview of somebody who can and should lead a diverse, growing, vibrant state. We want to welcome all people to North Carolina. There's so much talent in all kinds of people in North Carolina that we want to harness that talent so we can continue to grow and thrive and succeed in the state. And his type of division and hate and you're in, you're out, it is not the right way to lead a state in this day and age.
He has been able to animate his base, though. Do you think you are animating the Democratic base?
I expect that we will. I was just in Nashville. I was in Nashville over the weekend. Last night I was in Wilmington. It's a big state. I get all over the place. And there were 150 people who came out on short notice for a meet and greet at a brewery in Wilmington. And it was incredible energy. And so the answer to your question is yes. We're going to build an exciting, winning, vital, vibrant campaign. And I'm really interested. Anybody who wants to join us, joshstein.org, we would welcome your support.
Attorney General Josh Stein, thanks so much for your time and best of luck in the weeks ahead.
Thank you, Lena.
And for the latest on all these elections, our NC Capitol team is on top of every aspect of it. You can go to WRAL.com and search NC Capitol. Thanks so much for joining us. If you want to say something about tonight's discussion, you can email us your comments, questions, or criticisms on the record at WRAL.com or find me on social media. Have a great night.